Hey everyone, it's Jen. I wanted to share our ritual with you, even though we're not gathering to participate together tonight. Into the deep, honoring the full Sturgeon Moon and the lunar eclipse. What has survived the depths no longer needs to fear the shadow. There are nights when we gather beneath the moon and we ask for abundance, we ask for healing, we ask for love, opportunity, protection, clarity, change. We charge our tools, speak our intentions, raise our energy, and send out our desires to the universe. But perhaps there are also nights when we don't need to ask for anything at all. The full Sturgeon Moon and lunar eclipse tonight, August 27th, 2026, offered exactly that kind of opportunity. Our community had planned to gather for a ritual. I called it Into the Deep, an exploration of the ancient resilience of the sturgeon, the mystery of the full moon, and the experience of watching the moon travel into the Earth's shadow. Southern California's brutal August heat ultimately changed those plans. Gathering outdoors simply wasn't the wise choice. Oddly enough, that decision carried its own sturgeon lesson. Resilience isn't stubbornly refusing to change course. Sometimes survival means recognizing the conditions around us and adapting to it and continuing. And so, although our physical circle was canceled, the teaching remains. Why the Sturgeon Moon? The names commonly given to our full moons come from many different cultural and historical sources. The name Sturgeon Moon is particularly associated with indigenous with the indigenous traditions of the Great Lakes region, where the lake sturgeon have long held ecological subsistence and cultural importance. It's important not to flatten the many distinct indigenous nations and traditions into a single idea of a Native American sturgeon spirit animal. There is no universal indigenous teaching about sturgeon. We can acknowledge the cultural origins of the moon's name respectfully while looking directly at the remarkable creature herself. And sturgeon has quite a story to tell. Sturgeon are ancient. Their ancestors were swimming the earth's waters long before human beings existed. They have endured enormous environmental changes. They live much of their lives in deep water, navigating places where light barely penetrates. That makes the sturgeon an extraordinary symbol for endurance, adaptation, patience, depth, and survival. Sturgeon does not teach us how to avoid deep water. She reminds us that life can be lived there. Then the moon enters the shadow. This particular Sturgeon moon carried another remarkable feature, a deep partial lunar eclipse. During a lunar eclipse, Earth moves between the sun and moon, and Earth's shadow falls across the lunar surface. Think about the symbolism of that for a moment. The moon enters the darkness, but the moon hasn't disappeared. She has become less full. Nothing essential has been taken from her. A shadow passed over something that remains complete. There are few better metaphors for the seasons of darkness human beings experience. Grief can move over us. Fear can move over us. Uncertainty, failure, change, illness, disappointment, and loss can move over us. Sometimes the shadow is so enormous that we temporarily lose sight of who we were before it arrived. But shadow and destruction are not the same thing. The eclipse eventually passes, and the moon remains. Should witches practice magic during an eclipse? This question comes up every time an eclipse approaches. Some witches, pagans, astrologers, and magical practitioners strongly discourage magical work during an eclipse. There are good reasons behind that tradition. Historically, many cultures regarded eclipses as moments of disruption in the natural order. Traditionally, astrology has frequently treated eclipses as indicators of instability, endings, reversals, or significant change. Modern magical practitioners sometimes describe eclipse energy as chaotic or unpredictable. If you normally work with the lunar cycle magically, consider what is physically happening. The waxing moon builds, the full moon culminates, the waning moon releases. But during a lunar eclipse, Earth interprets the sunlight normally illuminating the full moon. Symbolically, the expected pattern has been interrupted. For practitioners who use lunar energy for highly directed manifestation work, that may be reason enough to say, not tonight. I respect that, but I think that sometimes we confuse two different things. Magic and ritual are not necessarily the same thing. Magic may attempt to direct energy toward a particular outcome. Ritual can do something entirely different. Ritual can witness. Ritual can honor. Ritual can remember. Ritual can mourn. Ritual can celebrate. Ritual can create sacred space in which human beings encounter something larger than themselves. And that gave me a different question. Instead of asking, what magic should we perform during the eclipse? What happens if we ask, how might we honor an eclipse without asking it for anything? That changed everything. What if the eclipse is a ritual? We don't need to capture the eclipse. We don't need to harness it. We don't need to charge something with it. We don't need to tell this extraordinarily celestial event what we'd like to accomplish on our behalf. We can simply witness it. The moon enters the shadow. We contemplate the shadows. The moon remains whole. We remember what remains whole within us. The familiar light disappears. We consider who we are when familiar things disappear. Shadow moves. We recognize that our own difficult seasons move through. The moon emerges, and we emerge carrying a deeper understanding of ourselves. The eclipse isn't providing energy for the ritual. The eclipse is the ritual. And Sturgeon becomes our companion in understanding it. Not because we are claiming an indigenous teaching that isn't ours, but because the ancient living creature demonstrates something simply through her existence. Life has traveled through darkness before. Life knows how to adapt. Life knows how to continue into the deep. The original community ritual was designed around three movements: descent, release, and return. Rather than asking participants to arrive with a predetermined intention, we would enter the ritual without knowing what we're going to release. That mattered. Sometimes our spiritual practice becomes another form of productivity. What am I manifesting? What am I healing? What am I releasing? What am I creating next? We arrive at the altar with an assignment for ourselves. Into the deep asks us to do something different. Listen first. Here it is, a simple eclipse ritual into the deep. You don't need elaborate tools. You will need a bowl of water, a candle, a small stone, a piece of paper or something to write with, and a quiet place to sit. If you prefer to not perform any magical practice during the eclipse, approach everything that follows as contemplation rather than spellwork. Nothing is being summoned, nothing is being manifested, nothing is being sent into the universe. We are simply paying attention. Let's begin. Light your candle and sit before the bowl of water. Take several slow, deep breaths. Look at the water. Then say, tonight I ask for nothing. I come to witness. I come to listen. I come to remember. And pause. Consider the ancient sturgeon traveling through the deep waters. She does not require the entire river to become visible before she moves through it. Ask yourself, where in my life am I waiting to see the entire path before I am willing to move? Don't force an answer. Sit with the question. Then descend. Close your eyes. Imagine yourself standing beside a deep, dark water. Step into it. Imagine yourself traveling downward until the noise of the surface disappears. Like the fish, you can now survive underwater. Here, we ask, what am I carrying because I once needed to survive? Pause. Think about that. Then, what protected me once but weighs upon me now? Then finally, what has completed its work? If something comes, write it down on your paper. Do not judge it. Don't edit it. You don't need to hate something in order to release it. Okay? In alignment with this. Sometimes the most sacred release begins with, thank you. You got me here. I don't need you anymore. And then we enter the shadow. If you are observing the eclipse, spend some time simply looking at the moon. Remember, she is still whole. Then ask, what remains whole within me, even when I cannot see it? Take the stone in your hand. Feel its weight. Think about everything you have survived. Not untouched, not unchanged, survived. Whisper into the stone, what in me has endured? There's nothing to send away. There's nothing to call towards you. Just remember. Then I release. Look again at what you wrote. If you are ready, say, I honor what this has taught me. I release what I no longer need to carry. Dispose of the paper safely after the ritual. There is no need to send it into the natural water, bury it, or burn it. The act of release has already happened within you. And then I'll return. When you are ready, look again at your candle. Touch the water. Hold your stone. And say, the shadow passes. The moon remains. The waters change. Life continues. And so do I. Then sit quietly. Don't immediately fill the silence. You don't need to figure out what comes next. For tonight, knowing that you are still here is enough. The ritual we don't hold. Our community ultimately didn't gather for into the deep. The heat told us otherwise, and perhaps there's a final teaching in that. We could have pushed through. We could have said, but this eclipse only happens once. We could have decided that spiritual commitment meant enduring uncomfortable and potentially unsafe conditions because we had already made plans. Instead, we adapted. The circle did not gather, but all of us remained beneath the same moon. There is something beautiful about that. A sacred community isn't created only when we're standing inside the same physical circle. Sometimes community is knowing that somewhere else, someone you love is looking towards the same sky. We don't always have to ask. This may be the part of the eclipse I carry forward most strongly. Our spiritual practices can easily become focused on transformation. Become better. Hear this. Release that. Manifest this. Attract that. Create the next thing. There is value in all of it. But spirituality also needs room for awe. Sometimes we can stand beneath the heavens without making a request. Sometimes we can approach the altar without an agenda. Sometimes we can encounter mystery without trying to turn it into a tool. Sometimes the most profound prayer is, I am here. I see this. I honor this. I ask for nothing. And perhaps this is one beautiful way to approach an eclipse. Not as energy to fear, not as power to capture, but as something extraordinary to witness together. The moon enters shadow. The moon remains whole. The shadow passes. And somewhere beneath those dark waters, Sturgeon keeps swimming. So will we. Blessed be.